So Russia has now responded to the Ukrainian counteroffensive in the south. They said no, which is, it's a bold decision, but if that's actually how they plan to proceed, it is going to make things significantly harder for Russian forces in that sector. Now, as a quick refresher, 2 days ago, Ukraine announced the results of their largest counteroffensive operation in 2 years. So this had been kept under wraps since January is when it initially kicked off. And they say that they liberated 26 different settlements and took back over 745 square kilometers. Now, to give you an idea of where this took place, we've got deep state map pulled up here. This blue and green area is what Ukraine says they liberated over the course of this counteroffensive operation. So zooming out, you can see this is kind of in southeastern Ukraine. It's a big chunk and actually spans territory across 3 different oblasts. So this is significant. I mean, doing the math, it looks like they wiped out all of Russia's gains in this sector over the course of the last year. So, that's something. But anyways, the general gist here is that Russia has been pretty quick to announce any advance, even when it's just 1 or 2 soldiers planting a flag, caught on a drone. They say that territory is now held by Russian forces, when that, of course, does not equal control. So Ukraine took advantage of this by clearing out these pockets silently. Effectively, they cleared a bunch of these areas and did not announce it. And they were banking on the fact that the Russian chain of command would be more concerned with keeping up appearances than actual success on the front, which is incredibly dark when you think about it, right? There are drones everywhere on this battlefield, right? They see everything at all times. So the idea that 7 months of offensive operations went unnoticed is a bit ridiculous. And you have to think that there were radio calls from these soldiers out there saying, hey, the fighting's picking up and there's Ukrainians here. They're not supposed to be here. Or my buddies in the house next to us have all been killed or captured. And at some point that comes up the chain of command and there's a Russian officer somewhere that says, yeah, but listen, I've been telling my boss for like 6 months that we control that area. In fact, I've told him we control the area 10 kilometers in front of you. So I don't know, good luck. Best wishes. Like that had to have been playing out in multiple occasions, which is crazy to think about. Now, for what it's worth, this isn't anything new. We've known about this for some time, that Russia heavily exaggerates progress in the battlefield, and it's got to be common sense that at some point Ukraine would use this to their advantage. So to support these claims from the Ukrainian side, they've been releasing geolocated footage for a couple days now. First, we had quite a bit of footage from the Ukrainian 7th Rapid Response Corps, and just yesterday, footage from the 425th Separate Assault Regiment. Now, interestingly, this was kind of met with silence from the Russian side, and we're always looking for the Russian reaction to any amount of news, and there's always a couple different things you can bank on. One is people just calling it all fake. This is all made up or AI generated, put all of your trust in the Kremlin and Putin. This could not possibly be happening. Those accounts were silent. Official Russian accounts, like from the Russian Ministry of Defense and the Kremlin, those were silent. They weren't addressing it. And even the accounts that generally take every opportunity to jab the Kremlin and say, see, we told you things aren't going the way they should be. If you would only do what we said, things would be better. They were silent. They weren't addressing it, which all of that together was pretty odd, but it does look like the silence has sort of broken. And it looks like the approach that Russia is going to be taking here is that nothing happened at all. Now, to kind of drive that point home, the Russian Ministry of Defense today announced that they had taken the settlement of Novoye Pole. No way I got that one right, but let's pull up a map here. So again, this is the territory that the Ukrainian Ministry of Defense and the Ukrainian forces, they listed a bunch of geolocated footage through here. Today, Russia says, actually, we took this village here. So far from adjusting their maps, they are actually saying that they advanced further. Now, to be clear, this was the Russian Ministry of Defense weekly roll-up. So I guess technically this could have happened before Ukraine announced the results of their 7-month-long operation. But TASS, a major media outlet in Ukraine, published that as the story today. Again, right here. They are continuing to say that Russian forces are advancing. And when looking at some of these more kind of straight-lined Russian channels, the ones that not a lot of commentary, it tends to be like very much in line with what it's close to state media is probably the right way to put it. Rybar is one of those. All right. Very much in line with Kremlin messaging. They came out with this. They were the first ones to do this massive 2-part series of let's explain exactly what happened here, guys, just to cut through everything. Don't worry about it. And it is all over the place. So picking out some parts here, and we'll have all of this linked in the description below if you want to check it out, of course. They said for over 6 months, small groups, mostly on foot and sometimes on light vehicle, have been attempting to reach the border of the Zaporizhia region along a front line of approximately 60 kilometers. Now, the enemy claims to have achieved a major breakthrough, liberating as many as 26 settlements. But by the end of July, the situation had deteriorated for the Russian armed forces, but the defense was not on the verge of collapse. They strangely went that direction a couple times. Like, I don't think anybody was talking about the Russian lines collapsing. Like, we certainly didn't address that in a recent video. I've not seen that analysis anywhere. For Rybar to immediately jump to, hey, the lines are not going to collapse is a little bit of, what are you talking about? Am I missing something here? They say, interestingly, until recently, the enemy was carefully trying to create the impression that nothing was going to happen in this direction. Despite the occasional panicked report that made their way into the media, the complexity of this situation was a surprise to everyone. And this has been an interesting reaction on the Russian side in the last, we'll say, 48 hours at this point, sometimes from more mill blogger types, a lot of kind of commentary, pro-Russian commentary. It's this mix of either it was a complete surprise, which raises the question of like, what's going on with your reporting, or it wasn't a surprise and they knew about it the whole time, which raises the question of, did you not do anything? Like you knew about it, you were getting pushed back, getting cleared out, and just kind of like, it's kind of a weird point where they're trying to decide either they knew or they didn't know. Now, the second part of the Rybar assessment here, they say on August 12th, what was perhaps the most important part of the Ukrainian armed forces offensive began, the reconnaissance and infiltration phase. As if to summarize their efforts, the enemy began a wave of publications intended to showcase their successes. There are many reasons why the enemy decided to open the can and suddenly publish results after more than 6 months of questionable successes. The enemy was in a hurry to cash in, not least because the activity of the Ukrainian armed forces was accelerating the detection and elimination of infiltration groups. Therefore, they had to hurry to withdraw the flag bearers under the cameras. So the Rybar assessment there is the Ukrainians were getting killed so fast that they had to quickly film a few videos to make sure they got that on camera before they left the area. That's the direction now that Rybar is going. So this kind of, it does genuinely bring us to a scenario of like, who do you want to believe? Because Russia, for their part today, has been releasing a number of videos saying, actually, we are in all of those areas that you said you took. And look, there's our guy with a flag. We control it, not you. So it's fair to look at this and say it's kind of a he said, she said, whose side are you going to take? Now, first off, there are already a number of analysts, incredibly smart people out there digging through every one of these videos to find out exactly when and how and where all of the little nuanced details that are regularly missed over. I don't have the skill set to do that. I don't know what I'm looking for. I mean, I can tell if it's winter or summer, but when you get into these guys like looking at the sides of a ruined building and say that definitely was June, not July, get out of here. No chance I can put that together. But there are 3 things I want to draw your attention to in trying to assess who's right here. Is Russia correct that this generally just like didn't happen at all and it's a complete Ukrainian psyop? Or is Ukraine correct that they went in, took 745 square kilometers and 26 settlements? So the first aspect here is when it comes to progress in the battlefield, Ukraine has been much more reliable for much longer. And it's not close. And I understand I come at this with a bias, but like, look, we just went over a Russian assessment that they took a village where there aren't even reports on like any media at all of Russians anywhere near that. And today they're like, actually, we now control that territory. What we've seen on the Ukrainian side is they do stay quiet when they are losing territory. So Bakhmut is an example, Konstantinivka. We don't see Ukraine come out and say, hey, by the way, we lost this village yesterday. They just don't announce that. However, it is also not a Ukrainian practice, from what I've seen now over the course of years, to outright lie or fabricate advances. That, however, is pretty common on the Russian side, where even in the pro-Russian kind of mill blogger and analyst community, there's constant frustration over making up gains and exaggerating progress and how much that costs in terms of soldiers' lives. So there's a bit of a trust me situation at play here. I get it, and I understand why you might want more than that. The good news, however, is I don't think anybody's watching this video to plan future operations. So, I guess trust whichever side you want. I trust the Ukrainian assessment for a couple other reasons here as well. Second, Russia has an incentive to lie here. Ukraine does not. So for Russia, there are commanders up and down the chain of command that have been sending up false reports for months, even years. For them to all of a sudden get called on that means that they either have to have this come to Jesus moment and say, all right, let me just hope that everybody above me is on board with this and like they're cool with what I'm going to say, or they keep lying. Like you see that there's a little bit of an incentive for the Russian chain of command to continue lying here. Now that of course doesn't mean they have to be, but there's definitely an incentive there. On the Ukrainian side, there's really no incentive to make this up. Like what is the rationale? It's not for, picking up additional support in the West. I mean, I was running through a number of mainstream news outlets today. This stuff isn't getting covered at all. The largest Ukrainian counteroffensive in 2 years, and I couldn't find anything about it. in the Wall Street Journal, the New York Times, the Washington Post. It's just not a thing. So why would Ukraine just make this up, especially if Russia could just walk right outside that building, raise a flag, and say, what are you even talking about? It would be kind of a silly information operation designed at nothing. So again, the incentive doesn't really line up there. Lastly, if Ukraine is lying here and just completely making this up, then the situation in the South remains largely unchanged. As in, if they completely made this up, the situation today is the same as it was 3 days ago. All right. But if Russia is lying about this, then the situation for them in this sector could actually get substantially worse. You cannot ignore reality on the ground and report up a different reality in war for very long before that really comes back to bite you. So if Russia is lying and going with the direction of everything is fine here, Ukraine made all of this up, we haven't lost any territory at all, it means reinforcements are not going to be coming in. That territory is not going to be opened up to CAB and rocket artillery and guided bombs and Shahed support, because they're going to say, no, actually, we still control it. Don't look at that Ukrainian psyop. That is going to make things significantly harder for the Russian military. So we'll see, I guess, right? Again, I tend to believe the Ukrainian assessments here. I think there's a lot more backing up what they've said at this point, but pretty interesting that Russia has decided to take the approach of no. It's kind of the direction they're going. Now, as a quick fundraiser update, we're actually supporting one of the units that participated in these counteroffensive clearance operations, the Black Talon Group. They fight under the Ukrainian SSO, or Special Operations Forces. We actually just wrapped up an interview with these guys as part of that fundraiser. Should be coming out here in the next couple days, but we're working through Protective Volunteer, which is a registered 501c3 nonprofit, to get these guys exactly what they need. So because it's a 501c3, every one of your donations is fully tax deductible. To learn more about that campaign, that link will be in the pinned comment and description below. But that's all we got for now. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you all next time.